Alright guys, so you might think you've seen me review this watch before. That's because I kind of have, indirectly. I was reviewing another Addiesdive, the AD2063, where I actually called this watch its twin, and I actually talked about it in detail without actually having had experience with it. And based on just specs and pictures of it, I decided that I'd probably prefer that other one. But I thought I'd better get this in, see if it can actually change my opinion once I've had hands-on experience with it. So that's what this video is going to be about. And if you haven't seen that video I'm on about, I'll leave a link to that up in the top, and I'll also leave a link to it down in the description as well. So this is the review of the Addiesdive AD2065. Quickly get this watch out of the way, briefly show you the packaging. It's their usual packaging, nothing special, but does help protect the watch. And here it is. So it's pretty similar to the previous one that I was mentioning earlier. And I've actually got that one down here, if you want to have a quick look at it. So you'll see it's got the same dial, but otherwise they're quite different watches. This is more of a traditional kind of dress watch, whereas that one is more of a dress diver. So you can get it either with this cream dial, which they call beige, or they do a silver one. But before we go into any more details, first of all let's go over the dimensions, because they are slightly different to what's listed. So this is listed as 36mm, I'm measuring it more as 37. Then we've got a thickness of 11mm, lug width of 19, which is a bit unfortunate, 18 or 20 would have been better. And that was one of the reasons why I initially thought I'd prefer the other one, because if you do want to swap out the strap, that can be a little bit awkward. Most of us tend to have a lot of 18 and 20mm straps, but not so many 19s, or at least I don't. Then when it comes to the lug to lug, that's coming in at 46mm, and then in terms of weight, on the supply bracelet, with all the links included, it's 112 grams, and then size for my 7-inch wrist, it's about 103. So seeing as we're talking about it, let's take a closer look at that bracelet, starting with the clasp. We've got that Addiesdive logo on there. Doesn't really suit a dressier style watch, so I would have preferred if they'd change that for something else. But in terms of micro adjust, got plenty there, so sizing won't be an issue at all. And then we've got the double pushers, milled clasp, so that is good. In terms of the case back, again we've got that Addiesdive logo there, so again, not really in keeping with a dress watch, more of a diver style. And this was one of the gripes I had with that other watch as well. Just the branding is far too dive-centric for a dress style watch. It kind of worked with that one because it was more dive style, but this one is even more dressy. Moving on to the bracelet. It's fully brushed, simple bracelet, but nicely done. The only polishing we've got is on the sides, and then it is just push pins as well. Now moving on to the head of the watch, you can see we've got polished sides there, so that does get the fingerprints a bit. We've also got that signed crown there, again with that logo. Got a nice bit of curvature to the case though, so that will help conform to wrist. And we've also got that nice top hat style crystal, which we'll be checking in a bit if it is actually sapphire or not. And you can also see there we've got those female end links, so helping with that compact lug to lug, and the top of those lugs are actually brushed. But now let's get onto the dial, because that is the star of the show with this watch, and it is a really good looking dial I think. As I say, I've got the cream dial version, and I just think it suits this kind of style of watch better than the more silver, even though that silver one does appear to be quite subtle. So there's actually a couple of differences between the dials on the two. So with this one, it's actually got those 24-hour markers on the inside, whereas the other one has actually got just little dots. We've also got the date window down at the 6 on this one, whereas the other one is at the 3 o'clock. But that one did actually have a frame around the date window, whereas this one doesn't. And another big change, which I found quite surprising when I was talking about it in the previous video, is the fact that this one's got Lume, and that one hasn't. You would have thought the more diver style watch would have actually had the Lume, as opposed to the dressier one, but that's not the way it is. I just found that interesting. So we'll be checking in a bit if that Lume is actually any good, if it's actually usable. But the biggest change is the branding on this one. So they've actually got that stylized font with the Addiesdive, which is far better, far more in keeping with a dressier style watch, as opposed to just having that Addiesdive logo. Yeah, you've still got that dive bit in the name, but I definitely think it works a lot better. And as I said earlier, I would have liked to have seen that used throughout the whole watch, not just on the dial. When it comes to the indices, they're all applied. Nice high polish on them, as you'd expect from a dressier kind of watch. And then with that GMT hand, it's not actually blued, it is just a metallic blue, but it still looks quite good. And then the only other thing we've got on the dial is that printed mint track around the outside, and that GMT text just above the date window. So when it comes to all the hands, we've got really nice proportions on all of them. They're all spot on I think. But as I said earlier, I just found it a little bit odd got a Lume on this one. I think it would have been better if they just had the plain silver hands on this one and put the loomed ones on the other watch. But now let's test out whether that nice top hat style crystal is actually mineral or sapphire, using the trusty diamond selector 2. And no, we haven't got sapphire, just mineral. which is a little bit of a shame, at least for me personally. I know some people prefer mineral crystal on this kind of style of watch. Let me know which one you prefer. Either way though, I think given the price, it's understandable, which we'll talk about in a bit. Before we do that though, first of all let's talk about the movement. So this is using the Swiss Ronda 515.24H, so that's a quartz GMT. So I'll quickly show you that in action now. So we've got the screw down crown, so if we just unscrew that, nice and grippy, no issues there, easy to use. Popping out to the first position, and then we can change the date. And then if we turn it the other way, we can move that GMT hand independently as well. So if pulling out to the second position, you'll see the second hand stops, so we've got hacking, and then we can just change the time. And obviously that GMT hand will move with that as well. And then pop it back in, second hand re-engages, all works well, no issues at all. Just screw that crown back down again. And with that screw down crown and screw down case back, we actually got 100 meter water resistance on this, which is more than enough for a dress watch. Or would you class this more of a garter? I guess that's another question. But leaving that to one side for a minute, let's talk about the Lume, see if that is any good, or if they just put it on there, it's just like an afterthought. So you can see we've got a little bit there already, but let's charge it up, give it a proper chance. And there we go. So I have to admit, when I first charged this up to check it out, I was really surprised to see Lume on the dial as well as the hands, because it wasn't that obvious looking at the dial that there was Lume on there, unless you look closely, because it isn't actually the indices that are lumed, it's just on the outside of them, so it's just on the dial, it's not applied or anything, it's just printed onto the dial. So it doesn't actually say on the website what lume they're using, but it's looking like BGW9 with that ice blue colour. And initially at least, it's actually surprisingly consistent across the hands and the indices, despite, as I said, the indices just being printed. Got no patchiness either, so Addiesdive are normally pretty good with Lume, so the fact that they've even put any on here at all, I imagine it's probably going to be pretty good, otherwise they wouldn't have bothered. But there's only one way to find that out, so let's speed this up now and see how it holds on. So initially, as you'd expect, not a great deal of change, but the question is, are those indices going to fade before the hands do? So far, it's not looking like it. They faded a little bit, but not as much as I thought they would have. It's actually holding on surprisingly well. Again, because there isn't that much surface area either. And as I say, with this being a dressier style watch, having any lume at all is just a bonus in my book. So this is really usable lume, surprisingly. Definitely a nice bonus to have. So you can probably see by now, this watch has definitely got some interesting details going on. Some that you wouldn't expect, which are nice pleasant surprises, others not so much. But you're probably wondering, how much is it actually going to cost? Because I've alluded to the price a few times in this video. So at the moment it's actually on sale, at least at the time of filming this. So if you pick it up on their website, which I'll leave a link to down in the description, it's currently coming in at about $74, which is about £56 and about €66. And I think for what you're getting, that's a pretty good price. So it's definitely not a perfect watch. There are a few things that I would tweak and change slightly. So I'll show you what it's like on wrist now, and then we'll go over the pros and cons, so you decide whether you want to pick one up or not. And here it is on my 7-inch wrist. So I think it looks pretty good. The more I've worn it, it's definitely grown on me. And it wears really nicely on wrist with that nice compact lug to lug, with those female end links and that curvature to the case. And as I said earlier, you can get the perfect fit with that plenty of micro adjust on there. So sizing won't be an issue at all. I really like that we've got that date window at the 6 o'clock, so I like the symmetry of that. Just prefer that, it's my personal preference. Perhaps it would have been nice if we'd had a border around it though, just to make it tie in with those indices a bit better. It's surprising that they didn't do that, considering they did on the other one, where it's at the 3 o'clock position. But one big change between the two dials is the branding. They definitely got it right on this one with that stylized font with the Addiesdive. I just wish they would have used it on the clasp as well, and also on that case back, just to make it tie in a bit better, and also on the crown as well. Perhaps a stylized A or something on that. But that is one of the only real gripes I have with this watch. Just sort out the consistency of that branding. And then the other big one is that lug width. Why didn't you just make it 18 or 20? Why did you have to go 19? A lot of the time I tend to keep my watches on bracelets if they come on bracelets. But I know a lot of people do like to change out straps and put on different things and try different stuff out, mix and match. It's going to be awkward with this one unless you've got, as I say, 19mm straps. Perhaps you might be able to squeeze a 20 in there, depending on the type of strap it is. But again, it is just a bit awkward, and needlessly so in my opinion. The only other real slight issue I have with this one, I personally would have liked to see sapphire on it, but again, I know a lot of people don't mind having mineral crystal on this kind of style of watch, so depending on who you are, that may or may not be a deal breaker for some people maybe. If the lack of sapphire and that 19mm lug width are deal breakers for you though, then perhaps that other watch that I've been talking about throughout this review might be better for you. It's not quite as dressy as this one, but it does fix those two issues. And again, that is down here, along with these other two Addiesdive watches I've got here as well. So if you're interested in any other Addiesdive watches, I'll leave a link to the playlist up in the top and also down in the description, because they do have some really nice pieces, and they're really affordable most of the time as well. But getting back to the question I initially asked at the beginning of this video, have I changed my mind on whether I prefer this one or that one? Now that I've spent more time with this one and actually had hands-on experience with it, I think I do actually prefer this one, surprisingly enough. Despite some of those issues that I did mention, I just prefer having that branding sorted out on the dial at least, and also that date window down at the 6. But which one would you be picking? If you're still not sure, don't forget to check out the full review of that other watch. But that's it for this one guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.